Alrighty, welcome back everyone. We just talked about the biggest storylines for each team as they head into the CFP. Obviously, Ryan Day's future might just take the cake for this upcoming weekend. We'll be watching that very closely, obviously. But let's get into the Heisman. Let's talk about a little bit of a Heisman reaction here. And Travis Hunter barely took home the Heisman Trophy, and that's probably the way that I saw it, or I thought this should have gone. Frankly, I thought it was going to be a little bit bigger of a margin by the time we got here, but very happy that Ashton Jeanty got a little bit of love here, and it should have been very close, and it was very, very close. It is actually the closest Heisman race that we have had since 2009, when it was Mark Ingram barely edging out Toby Gerhart and Colt McCoy, and to be totally honest, that's probably Ndamukong Suh's Heisman as far as I'm concerned. But at the end of the day, it was the closest one since the 2009 race, and that was a darn good race with a lot of really, really talented running backs in that thing. And then Colt McCoy was one of those guys that found his way to New York quite a bit, it felt like. But really remarkable season from Travis Hunter, no doubt about that. As a wide receiver, was top 6 nationally in receptions, receiving yards, and touchdowns. Was absolutely ridiculous on the offensive side of the ball and made plenty of highlight plays, that is for sure. And then as a defensive back, led the nation in coverage grade by per PFF, was tied for 5th nationally in passes defended with 15, 11 pass breakups, 4 INTs. The dude is incredible. He was absolutely remarkable this year, and it's led to some conversations around Twitter, around a lot of the different social media apps, talking about, well, should it have been Ashton Jeanty? It should have been Ashton Jeanty, and it's not even a question. Ashton Jeanty ran away with this award, and if you don't think that he did, then you're wrong in every level. That is ridiculous. I'll be totally honest with you. All due respect to everyone that is saying that. If you think Ashton Jeanty should have won this award, I understand that. He had a remarkable year. I, for much of the year, leaned his direction until towards the end of the year when Travis Hunter just totally took over this thing. But the reality is, the idea that Travis Hunter didn't belong in New York, the idea that Travis Hunter didn't belong anywhere near the Heisman Trophy, is outright ridiculous. Frankly, it might be the most remarkable season I have ever seen. He did things that I did not think was possible, and then he did it 12 times in a row. I didn't think it was possible to do it in one game, much less do it in 12 games where you're playing almost 130 snaps per game, you're all over the field, and not only are you playing 130 snaps, because that's been an idea going around that all he did was play snaps, and that's why he's getting it, he just has stamina. No, he played both positions at a very, very elite level. Speaking conservatively, he was a top 5 cornerback and a top 5 wide receiver this year. So I understand the argument. I understand Ashton Jeanty's argument. He has a very, very good one as far as I'm concerned, and that's why it was this close. But Travis Hunter is your Heisman, and I have really no problem with that. I think the right person won it yesterday, or on Saturday. I think he was absolutely remarkable this year, and it's kind of sparked a debate around what was his Heisman moment this year, because there have been some incredible moments. Let's be totally honest. There was the ridiculous catch against North Dakota State. There was the run against Utah, which felt like kind of the moment where it kind of got solidified as far as I'm concerned. But for me, the biggest one of the bunch was this. It was the fumble that he forced in overtime in the Baylor game. They caught a Hail Mary. LaJohntay Wester made a ridiculous catch that if it falls through his hands, Baylor would have been in the Big 12 championship. So just gives you an idea of how impactful a lot of these plays were. But you get the Hail Mary, you go to overtime, and then Travis Hunter makes this play. He makes the play that knocks the ball out of the back of the end zone, gives them that win, and moves them firmly in position to compete for a Big 12 title. It was a remarkable moment. I think there's a number of different moments that you can choose from for this kid, but that was the moment where it all got very real for me. That was the moment when I said, okay, this might not be a joke anymore. It might not be, one of those guys that just puts up crazy numbers on not that great of a team. They're not going to win a lot of games, and that's going to be that. He was able to get a pretty much, not single-handedly, obviously, but in that moment, single-handedly get a big-time win for his team, and that's when it all got very real for me. That was the one that really stood out, and in my opinion, of this year for Travis Hunter. I would call that his Heisman moment, if you will. But moving forward to the other players, and just wanted to give some love to the other finalists, because Ashton Jeanty put together the best running back season we've seen since Melvin Gordon, and almost a decade ago. Really remarkable season for him. He made Boise State appointment television again, which was really, really fun. I grew up when it was really, it was a big part of college football. Didn't necessarily engage in it too much. The Boise State lore and getting involved with all of those teams that were so incredible to watch, I just didn't quite get into it as much as a lot of other people did. This year I was able to, and it was absolutely incredible to watch. That blue field, that program in general, is such a special one that has so much college football history, and Ashton Jeanty was so incredible. He led the country in rushing by such a margin that the second leading rusher in the country was Ashton Jeanty after contact. That's how good he was. He was absolutely ridiculous all year. It was insanity to watch him every single week, and that's why it was remarkably close with a guy that has done something we've never seen. Well, this was very close to something we've never seen, and might just be something we've never seen by the time the playoff ends. Dillon Gabriel was the orchestrator of one of the most efficient offenses in the entire country. He was the leader of the only undefeated team in the country, at least in FBS. He did a great job. He had a couple of huge moments throughout the year, especially against Ohio State. Had over 3,500 pass yards, 28 passing touchdowns, 7 rushing touchdowns, only 6 picks. He was remarkably efficient throughout this year, and that offense is one of those things that could just carry him to a national title. Remarkable group, and the way that they run offense is just so crisp every single time. Cam Ward had one of these statistical seasons that looks a lot like a lot of Heisman winners from the past couple of years. You compare him to a Jaden Daniels last year or a Joe Burrow from a couple of years ago, it's a little bit off, but not by much. He had over 4,000 passing yards, 36 passing touchdowns, 7 INTs. The dude was absolutely incredible, led the best offense in the entire country, and kept Miami in that CFP race probably a little bit longer than they probably should have been there. But remarkable stuff. We can argue all day about, who should have won, and is Ashton Jeanty, did he get robbed, all of that different type of stuff. That is definitely a conversation that can be had, but I can say this without any question in my voice. If you are one of the 109 people that did not have Ashton Jeanty or Travis Hunter third, or that did have one of those two guys third, go ahead and give up your vote. You don't need to be voting in this thing because those two guys were far and away the two best players in college football this year. And then to the 25 that didn't place a vote this year, go and find a new sport to cover. You do not deserve that vote. You do not deserve to be even remotely near that vote. So go ahead and give it up. Go ahead and move on and cover basketball for the rest of your career, because if you have a Heisman vote and you're not using it, you don't love this sport enough. I'll leave it at that for the time being, but let's get into a couple of different things here, and we'll talk about, firstly, the top 10. And this was kind of an interesting group because I think it's a little bit out of whack, I'll be totally honest. But a cool stat just to start this off, 8 of the top 9 players either started at the G5 or FCS level, Tyler Warren being the one exception. He was the guy that started at Penn State, has been at Penn State his entire time. Kyle McCord, obviously in the top 10 there, absolutely started at Ohio State, made his way over to Syracuse. But all of these guys, Travis Hunter started at Jackson State. A little bit different of a situation, I will give you that. Obviously, a very talented top recruit coming out of high school, so that's a little bit different. Dillon Gabriel started at UCF. Ashton Jeanty is where he started, no doubt about that. Cam Ward came over from Incarnate Word. Cam Scadaboo all the way from Sac State, all the way to the Heisman top 10. Really remarkable stuff. Heisman top 5. Really remarkable stuff from this entire group. 11 different players receive a first place vote, which I don't necessarily fully agree with, but gives you an idea just how incredible this group was. But overall, this order is a little bit out of whack as far as I'm concerned. First of all, the top 2 is the top 2. That's not a question. I'm not questioning that by any means. I would have Cam Ward over Dillon Gabriel here, and frankly, I'd probably knock Dillon Gabriel a couple of spots down. Incredible season from him, not necessarily to the level of a lot of the other guys on this list. So I would put Cam Ward above him. I'd probably put Cam Scadaboo above him. And if you looked at the votes, Cam Scadaboo probably should have been in NYC. There was not enough of a gap between him and Cam Ward to justify him not being there. So that's a total side conversation. But Bryson Daly comes in at 6. Shedeur Sanders should be there as far as I'm concerned. He was absolutely incredible. He had the best statistical season of any quarterback not named Cam Ward. He firmly deserves to be in this list. And then I love Bryson Daly. He could just slide down to the 8 as far as I'm concerned. That would be more than fine. Or Tyler Warren can slot down 1. He can slot down 1. But the reality is Shedeur Sanders should be a lot higher on this list than he is. And then there's one person that just isn't on here that absolutely should be, and it's Cade Klubnik. There's no doubt in my mind that Cade Klubnik should be on this list. I've absolutely loved what Curtis Work has done this year. I would slide Cade Klubnik in for Curtis Work in a second. It's been a really fun year from Indiana and Curtis Work. Cade Klubnik's been on a different level. He deserves to be in this top 10, but overall, you got the 2 at the top right. You got it as close as you possibly should have. I'm all good with that. the after that is a little bit of a worry for me. But obviously not necessarily too big of a deal there. Definitely something that a lot of people will be watching for as we head into next year. And let's talk about next year here for a second and give you 10 guys I'm watching very closely for the Heisman next year. We'll start with K. Klubnik. He was a guy that obviously I think should have been in the top 10 this year. Obviously will be back in that offense, be more comfortable. The wide receivers will be a year older. The kid should be able to cook next year. Drew Aller just got some news that he likely will be back next year, and we'll talk about that when we get to the transfer portal segment and talk about how crazy that situation is. But love Drew Aller and his ability. They are a big-time receiver away from him having a Heisman-level season. The kid is absolutely incredible. If they get a difference maker on the outside throughout this portal cycle, I think it could be a really special season for Drew Aller. Arch Manning's obviously one with that ability in that offense. A lot of special things can happen, no doubt about that. Obviously, still a little bit more of a question mark than a lot of the other guys on this list, but a very, very talented player that in a Steve Sarkisian offense should be able to put up crazy numbers. You have the duo of freshman wide receivers with Jeremiah Smith and Ryan Williams, both guys that I think are going to be absolutely incredible, be far and away their wide receiver ones, and their quarterback will be a first-year starter, which should help them out just a little bit more to stand out among that group. Jeremiah Love is an absolute star in the making in the college football world. The Notre Dame game, the Notre Dame offense, I expect to take a big-time step forward in the pass game next year. I think that just opened lanes for this kid to be absolutely incredible. I think he could have a remarkable year next year and kind of take the world by storm. And then you got the quarterbacks. You got DJ Lagway, who I'm going to be watching very closely. Cannot wait to see what this kid can do. I think he could have a Heisman-type year next year. Kevin Jennings caught everyone's eye next year and is trying to keep them this year and is trying to keep them as they head into next year. And then Lenore Sellers in the same exact situation. And then I'm not picking against a fifth-year LSU guy. If you know any history about fifth-year LSU quarterbacks, you know it goes pretty well for him. So I'm going to definitely lean into Garrett Nussmeier. I think he's a remarkable player, and I think with some of the moves they're making in the portal, he could be very, very potent next year. But a lot of really incredible guys to watch out for next year. But this year, it was Travis Hunter's time. It was absolutely incredible to watch. One of the best seasons that I've ever seen. He did some things that I didn't think were physically possible, and he did them very consistently. So, really, really remarkable season. We'll get to see him one more time in that Colorado Buffaloes uniform before he moves on to the next level, and probably is a top 5 overall pick. Remarkable player, and definitely comes off a remarkable season with the best trophy in the sport, sans the national title. But let's take our second break here, and when we come back, we got to get into all the games that happened this past weekend. We'll obviously start with Army-Navy, a huge one that Navy just kind of dominated in, and then we'll get to a couple of bowl games, we'll get to a couple of FCS games to just give a little bit of love there, but we'll break it all down right after this, so stick with us.